All right, welcome. We are doing 1.4 rewriting equations and formulas. I am Mr. Hillesheim from Dodge Middle School. I am the one doing the narration. Today's lesson objectives are you should be able to use a formula for one measurement to write a formula for a different measurement. Also, you should be able to rewrite equations to solve for a variable. So let's take a look at a definition that you should need to know. Literal equation. What is a literal equation? An equation that has two or more variables is called a literal equation. To rewrite a literal equation, solve for one variable in terms of the other variable. So in other words, we're going to have equations with multiple variables, and we're going to solve for one of those variables to get it by itself. We're going to treat these variables that we are not solving for as numbers. So they're going to be a number so that we can get them by themselves, but they're going to remain as a letter. Let's take a look at an example. Solve the equation 2y plus 5x equals 6. We're going to solve for y. When solving for y, I want to make sure I highlight my term that I'm going to solve for. So my y is with the 2. This means I can't touch anything with the y until I know I have it by itself on the equal sign. So let's rewrite this. 2y plus 5x equals 6. Let's draw our line straight down the equal sign to make sure that we keep everything separate. Now I'm going to move everything but the 2y first. In order to do that, I have to move my 5x. The opposite of positive 5x is negative 5x. So I'm going to subtract 5x from both sides. I cross these off. Now that's going to give me a 2y equals 6 minus a 5x. I cannot do 6 minus a 5x because they are not like terms. So when I do this, I'm going to have negative 5x plus 6. So I'm left with 2y equals negative 5x plus 6. From here, I have 2y, which is a multiplication problem. The opposite of multiplication, or the inverse operation of multiplication, would be division. So I'm going to divide everything by 2. So my 2's cancel out, leaving me with y equals, this is negative 5 over 2x, plus 6 divided by 2, which would be 3. So my final answer, y equals negative 5 over 2x plus 3. Let's take a look at a couple more examples. Now we're going to look at a formula. We have two formulas actually, and we are going to solve for one of the variables. So the way I'm going to solve for the variable is, again, I'm going to highlight. So I have a equals 1/2 b times h, and I'm going to solve for b. My b is located right there. Okay, so I have a number in this problem. Let's get rid of the fraction. And how am I going to move the fraction? Well, there's a trick for multiplication and fractions. The inverse operation would be that we would divide by the fraction. But in this problem, there's a little trick with fractions, and anytime we're solving equations, we can multiply by the reciprocal. So my reciprocal of 1/2, which means I'm going to flip the top and the bottom, is 2 over 1. So I'm going to multiply by 2 over 1. So that's going to give me a 2a equals this 2, and this 2 cancel off. The 1 and 1 remain the same. So it's base times height. Now again, I have to solve for b, and I'm going to do the inverse operation. b times h, the opposite is division. So I'm going to divide both sides by h. So that's going to leave me with the answer of 2a divided by h equals, my h's cancel off, b. Okay, So there is my answer. Now, for those of you that are a little bit more advanced, you could use a different method. It's just going to give you the exact same answer. So again, let me rewrite my equation. I have A equals 1/2 base times height. Okay, so you saw that I multiplied by the reciprocal. So if I multiply both sides by the reciprocal to get rid of this 1/2, I multiply by 2. But then, if you look at my next step, I divide by an h. So I'm going to also divide by h at the same time as multiplying by 2 over 1, which would give me a 2 over h, which is basically my reciprocal. So now I have my 2's that have canceled off, and my h has canceled off. So that's going to leave me with the remaining 2a divided by h equals b. Both answers are correct. Both answers are written the exact same way. Just showing you a different way to solve it. Now let's take a look at number 2. We have y equals mx plus b, and we're going to solve for m. So let's draw our line straight down the equal sign so we make sure that we keep everything separated. And my m is right here. I need to keep that by itself, so I have to move everything away from the m. So I have this b over here. What's the opposite of adding b? It is subtracting b. So I'm going to subtract b from both sides. That should cancel off. That would then give me a y minus b equals mx. Mx, once again, is a multiplication problem. So we're going to have to do the inverse operation, which would mean that I have to divide everything by x. So I divide everything by x. That is going to give me an answer of y over x minus b over x equals m, because my x's canceled out. Okay. Now there's also another way that you could rewrite this equation, and that answer would just be when I get to my y minus b equals mx, instead of, I'm still going to divide by x, but I'm going to divide everything here by x. So my x's cancel out, and I can leave it as y minus b over x equals m. Because I'm dealing with a variable, it's a lot easier to just leave that by itself, as opposed to when I have a number, then I should probably divide it into everything, because sometimes it'll simplify down a little bit farther and just make my problem look a little cleaner. So let's take a look at a few problems for you to do on your own. Solve the equation for y. Y is very clearly marked for you. So if you could pause the video and work these problems out on your own, and then I will come back and work the problems out so you can check your answer and see how you did. Pause the video at this moment, please. All right, welcome back. Hopefully you got the right answer. Let's check to see how you did. So I'm going to draw my line straight through the equal sign. I'm going to get y by itself. So I have to do the inverse operation. I'm going to move everything away from y. So the opposite of negative x is positive x. So I'm going to add x to both sides. My x's cancel off, leaving me with 5y equals, again, I can't combine x plus a 10 because I do not have like terms. So I have x plus 10. Now I have 5y, which is a multiplication problem, and again, I'm going to divide everything by 5. So when I divide everything by 5, it simplifies down. If you recall on the last example, I did not do that. Okay? Remember, we divided the whole thing, but that was because my base or my denominator was a variable. And now that I have a number, that's why I'm going to divide everything. So y equals x over 5 plus 10 divided by 5, which would be 2. So your final answer, y equals x over 5 plus 2. Let's take a look at number 2, see how you did. My line goes straight down through the equal sign to keep everything separated. Now I have the minus 4y. I'm going to leave that alone. I need to move my 4x over because y is what I'm looking for. So the opposite of positive 4x would be a negative 4x. So I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. 4x cancels off. That leaves me with negative 4y equals, now I have a 1 minus 4x. Again, I do not have like terms, so I can't combine those. So that's going to give me a negative 4x plus 1. Now I have negative 4y, which is a multiplication problem. So I need to divide everything by a negative 4. Remember, division is the inverse of multiplication. So I'm going to divide by negative 4. That leaves me with y equals a negative 4 divided by a negative 4. Negative and negative make positive, and that's just 1, so I can write it as x plus a negative 1/4. Okay? And the cleaner version of that, which I would prefer, is y equals x, not x plus, but x minus 1/4. So that is the cleaner version of it. It is not wrong if you write it as y equals x plus negative 1/4. Still the same thing. All right, let's take a look at another example. Solve the temperature for the formula of F. Now, if you recall, we did order of operations, and remember when we solve equations, we always work in reverse order of operations. So therefore, the parentheses is the last thing that I'm going to touch, especially because the F is involved in the middle. So again, we have this nice fraction. And if you remember my little trick that we talked about, we're going to multiply by the reciprocal, which is 9 over 5. So I'm flipping my top number and my bottom number. So the 5 cancels, the 9 cancels. Let's draw our line through the equal sign. Okay, so I have 9/5 C equals F minus 32. That looks like a much easier problem to manage. Okay, so I still have to get the F by itself. The opposite of negative 32, or the inverse operation, would be adding 32 to both sides. When I do that, 9/5 C and 32, again, I do not have like terms. So 9/5 C plus 32 is going to equal F because the negative 32 and positive 32 cancels off, leaving me with my final answer of 9 over 5 C plus 32 equals F. Here is your formative assessment. Please write down the questions. The questions will follow on Schoology, and you should be able to answer them there. And hopefully you will get some instant feedback on how you're doing with this lesson. Please come to class tomorrow prepared to ask questions. That should be all for 1.4, rewriting equations. Hopefully this lesson was meaningful and you got something out of it. Have a great